Hello people, I'm going to talk to you today about embroidery foot height or fabric thickness. So when you're doing in the hoop projects, quite often you'll find that your work becomes quite thick in areas, especially when you're going over, let's say we're looking at, say, putting ears into seams and you're using PU and you're wanting to actually do sew round seams and you've got quite a bit of thickness. I wouldn't say we're pushing our machines to their max now, but we're definitely utilising their ability, that's for real. So on a lot of them, well, mostly all embroidery machines have a ability to actually alter the foot height to accommodate fabric thickness. Now, the setting is usually referred to as embroidery foot height. On Bernina, it's referred to as fabric thickness. Janome don't actually do anything with this particular topic, well, especially with the standalone machines. I'm not sure whether they do with the 15,000 machine, but they have a foot which we can use to actually change the foot height. So let's just go through the process. So what we're talking about is that one of the things that will happen is either your foot on the machine gets stuck on the fabric, or in this case we're dealing with PU. We don't want it to be pushing the fabric in front of the foot. It still needs to be gliding over. Now, one of the biggest reasons for doing thread shredding would be the abrasion is being caused, either there being too much flapping underneath the foot, or the foot is too tight onto the top fabric. So that's why our threads shred, or they snap. So if you've got a ball of fluff happening above your needle hole or above the needle bar, that means your thread is shredding, so it actually is being abraded by the work. So embroidery foot height can change that. It can also inhibit your hoop from moving, and therefore your registration around the edge of the design will be out. It will not be sitting in the right place. So what we're looking for is, let's just put a hoop on. So I've just got a piece of batting. And a piece of stabilizer and some fabric, and let's put our foot down. Excuse me. So we want there to be enough clearance so as that when the foot is doing its stitching, it's not going to push the fabric along. We don't want it to be creating a loop and pushing the fabric along. We also don't want it to be too high that allows the fabric to flap up and down underneath the foot. So if I just slowly start this, you'll see that the foot is just hovering above where it is stitching. Okay, so it's not pushing. Right, let's just let that finish. Right, so as you can see that it elevates and comes up quite high, and that's ready for us to put more fabric under, etc. If we need to change the height, we go into the settings on our screen. And the screen setting is very easy. In the brother machines, we go into our preferences and we find our page. Oops. And it says embroidery foot height. Now, it is not sewing foot height. It is embroidery foot height, because you can change the height of your sewing machine foot as well if you have a combination machine. So it's embroidery foot height. Its standard is generally 1.5. Okay, that's the standard, and that's generally what the machine's on. You can lower it or you can increase it. Now, we deal with millimeters in Australia, and so in America this screen would be in imperial measurements, okay? But the standard, the default setting will always be the white writing on a black background, okay? So as soon as you go off there, it becomes black writing on a grey background. So that means that you're off default, okay? So when we're doing very, very thick seams, we might be way up so as that we're really, really high, so as that we can accommodate perhaps the loft that we'll be getting in something which is this thick, or as you can see here, we've got a bit of thickness happening here. When that's turned inside out and we've got all the seams on, you'd want to have the foot high. So I've just put the foot high. Let's have a look to see what it does. It'll probably shred the... now you can see how it is pulling the fabric up as the needle that is too high. When that was stitching, that is too high. It is, and we're talking about millimeters, but millimeters make a difference. So on a brother machine, when we're embroidering, our foot is basically stationary and it hovers this about the same amount of distance above our work as it's creating the stitch. So it's a static foot. When we come to a machine, excuse me, like a Janome machine, you'll find that the machine has got what they call a pogo.
Yep.
So the actual foot comes up and down like a pogo stick, and that's called a pogo foot. Now, the Janome machine, this particular one, which is the most common, which is the 500E, it comes with this normal P foot, which is the standard P embroidery foot. But we've actually gone and invested into another foot, which is called the convertible free motion quilting foot set. So it gives you a few different feet, but really what we're interested in is we're interested in here. See, there's a little spring here, and there's also the ability to actually use this little screw to increase the height of the foot between our work, okay? So that is manually the embroidery foot height. Now this foot number, depending on what your machine is, but for the 500 and 550Es, it's called a 202146001. You can get that from your dealer. There's a whole lot of varieties of these, so you need to make sure that's the right foot for your machine. But that is the foot for the 500Es and the 550Es and the 400Es. So the embroidery foot height on this is altered by using that little screw. It was virtually, I would say, it was virtually impossible to do a thicker project with this particular foot it came with, because it was just not enough distance between the foot and the work. It would bind. And I've seen lately a lot on the Janome websites, and especially for embroidery, that people are having shredding and they're getting registration which is not working. I'm thinking to myself, it comes down to foot height, because what they were doing is they're doing some embroidery on quilting and doing in the hoop projects, and things were not working. So since we've had this foot, things are working really, really well. So very, very happy with that. With Bernina, you need to go into your embroidery mode and then go into your embroidery settings. And I'll talk about that when we've got a little video about that. And then with Husqvarna and FAF, same thing. You embroidery mode or embroidery settings, and you're looking for adjusting embroidery foot height or embroidery foot height level. To find the embroidery settings on an Bernina machine, we go into our gears icon, then we select our hoop for embroidery settings, and the rolled up piece of fabric with the two arrows is our embroidery thickness. The preset is 4mm. We can go up to 7.5 or up to 10. We exit out of this screen, go back to our embroidery field, and this setting will stay on as long as the machine is switched on. For the FAF machine, there we're looking at embroidery settings in our settings menu, and we'll come down to presser foot height for embroidery. Now we've got our 0 as it being our default, and so we can come up or down. Not quite sure how far up we can go, but it's pretty high. We have our temporary settings, which are all in the orangey beigey colour, and we have a selection of different embroidery feet. So the dynamic spring foot is the ideal pogo foot for doing the embroidery
which is quilt-like as well. There is also a Sensomatic foot, same as when we're looking at the Husqvarna settings. We'll go into settings, and there are temporary embroidery settings in this area. We go to the floating foot height, or you can actually tell the presser foot how high it should be, and so we can use our plus and minus there. Just different wording, does the same sort of things. Again, temporary setting, once the machine is turned off, goes back to default. Only Brother keeps that setting as being a permanent setting, so it was changed by the user each time you use the machine.
So each machine has its own ability to do it. If you are on an older machine with a pogo foot, you may find that you do not have that ability if it's an older machine. If it's a very basic machine, you may not have that ability either. So it's just one of those things, but the more modern machines seem to all accommodate having some embroidery foot height or fabric thickness ability. We find that we do adjust quite a lot during a project. We might start off at normal, and then by the time we've got to our last layer of backing or lining or what have you, the foot's been increased 1 or 2 times. Totally happy to do that during a project. Your foot height will stay set generally at what you have set it with a Brother machine. With the other brands, as soon as you turn the machine off, it will go back to default. So I hope that helps you a little bit. And then look to see what your machine can do. Check with your dealer. If you've got a Janome, you may want to invest into another foot with a spring and screw ability to actually raise it lower. If you haven't played with your embroidery foot height there, have a look. I am constantly saying, check your foot within our workroom, and I'm constantly talking about it with our customers through email. If you've got a Brother or a Baby Lock, what is your embroidery foot height set to? Do you change it? Do you adjust it? So explore a little bit with that and see if you have some more success. It may eliminate some of your problems. Bye now.